Hello, it's me, Jarrett Casey, Jarrett Earl Casey. And it is September 13th, 2020, 10:58 p.m., Sunday night. And I just got home from work once again. So I'm working 7 days straight this week. So that's kind of cool, I guess. Once again, it's September 13th, 2020 at 10:59 p.m. And my name is Jarrett Casey here in Midvale, Utah. So yeah, work was good today. My best friend from high school, his name's Aaron. He worked with me. So I used to work at California Pizza Kitchen back in college in Scottsdale. And one year when I came home from the dorms, I stayed in Salt Lake with my other best friend Casey. And Aaron, so I transferred to the Gateway California Pizza Kitchen in Salt Lake. And Aaron needed a job, and so I set him up with an interview, and that was 14 years ago. And he's worked there for 14 years. He got the job, and it kind of changed the whole direction of his life. And today was his last day. He's moving on to PF Chang's, and so it was interesting. He's like, "Oh gosh, you got me this job 14 years ago, and you're here now that I'm leaving." And I was like, "Oh yeah, it is kind of crazy," because he just got me this job a couple months ago. And I said, "Thanks for holding down the fort." But I'm sad to see him go. So anyways, that was the big thing at work tonight. But it was a good night. I ended the week. I think I made more money this week than I have any other week since I started there. But I have worked the most amount of shifts. So, it makes sense. And yeah, anyway, so today I decided, normally I have Sundays off, so I decided to sleep until 8, which turned into 8:30, because that's normally when I sleep in on my days off. And then I got up, I did my morning class, I went to the gym, but I got confused about time. I had to work at 1. So I left the gym early. I thought I was running late, and then I got to work an hour early, and then I realized, oh my gosh, what am I doing? I could have been at the gym for longer. So I'm gonna have to go back tomorrow and finish. I had to cut my workout short, but so today's lesson was called Speak to the King. And it was just recognizing, and the King is Christ. And so it was just about recognizing that Christ abides within each of us, and there's a king or a prince or a queen or a princess. There's royalty within each of us, and that is the Christ that lives within us. And we can speak to him, and he speaks to us. And we can see that when we see one another in the holy encounter. So a couple points that she touched on. First, she talked about the course's definition for charity, which is a little different than we look at charity. We look at like charitable donations, or taking, I guess sometimes some people look at it like taking pity on people. Other times it's just trying to help people that need help. And in the course, it offers us another way to look at charity, which is looking past someone's actual accomplishments in time and seeing the King or the Christ. So another way we can offer charity to one another, and it's not taking pity on anyone, is to look past someone's accomplishments in time. So you can look at them and say, oh, well, this is all you've accomplished, so this means this. So we can offer charity to one another by seeing past that and seeing the Christ in them or the King in them, which has achieved so much more than what the person we're looking at seems to have achieved up to a certain point in time. And even that is with our limited perception of time in this life. We don't know what they've achieved outside of this life, outside of time, and even on different levels or in different realms during this life. So, you just never know when you meet someone who they are, who they might be, or what blessings they have to offer, or what they have offered, or what they've worked for, or what they've accomplished, just by kind of seeing with your very limited sight. And so, the best, most consistent way to see people is to just look right past those seeming accomplishments in time and see who they truly are, which is the Christ. And if we can do that more and more often with more and more people, and we can keep reminding ourselves to do that, and we can learn and develop how to do that, then we're offering so much to people. And we're also allowing them to step into their light. So when we see someone as only being this or only having accomplished this, and we say, okay, well then, so this is who you are. And that message is given to people over and over again in their life, sometimes very overtly, sometimes very subtly, over and over again by all these people they meet. They tend to shut off to their limitless possibility, and they kind of step into that role that they're being pinned into. Whereas if they're surrounded by more and more people who see the Christ in them, who see past all of that and see who they truly are, you start allowing them to step into the Christ and step into that more perfect, loving, and true self. And they may still seem to struggle, but you're giving them permission to be who they are, to be a perfect child of God. And so it's so important to teach that and to try, at least try and practice it. And you can forgive yourself for not being perfect at it. And to acknowledge when people are doing it, say, thank you so much. That was so powerful. You have no idea the gift you bring into people's lives by seeing them that way. And so thank you. And seeing when people do that, learning to recognize when they're doing that and learning to do it ourselves is just so powerful. You just don't know how much impact that can have on the world. And so, anyways, and then she says, after this 40 days, we're no longer going to be in the desert. She touched on, before Jesus went to the desert, that after he emerged from the desert was when the miracles really began to flow. And she said, we will no longer be tempted by our ego. And after we leave the desert, our miracles will begin. So that was really cool. Other than that, today we were talking some about, I've been off and on. We talk a lot about space and space travel and exploration and humanity's emergent role in the galaxy or universe. And what that might mean. And I had previously expressed concern when the president decided to create Space Force. So at first I was like, oh my gosh, that's so cool. And then I thought about it and I was like, I think it's really great. I don't love that it's a branch of the military. I mean, it makes sense. I understand the decision, especially, I mean, it makes sense. And also for funding, I think it's easy. The Department of Defense has so much funding, and so it's probably a lot easier for them to put it in that umbrella, where they can more easily access a lot of that funding rather than trying to keep it separate and have to come up with all these new approvals and ways to move money over. So it just makes sense to keep it in the Department of Defense. I was just very concerned that I'm like, okay, well, I can see that's cool. And the military does a lot. It's not all about battle readiness or war or weaponry, or conflict. It's, they do so much. I was like, I just really hope that their focus is, even though it may be a branch of the military, is that if we have spaceships or a fleet of spaceships, that they are not militarized. That their focus remain peaceful, research, education, exploration, development, education, even families. I know that some people, well, in my head, they've been like, what are you talking about? And I'm like, it's so important. All those things are just so important. And not be about battle or weaponry or attack or even defense. I shy away from the word defense even. I think protection, if you can have more of the spirit of protection, and they can build into that fleet more protections that can extend protection to others, to the country, to the world, but less about defense in the form of weapons. I think it sends a very powerful message to the people, to the world, to the beyond, and to the heavens, that we really are moving forward and emerging from this age in a spirit of peace, which I think can save a lot of time and reduce a lot of suffering just by sending that very powerful message. Because as we prepare for attack, we invite attack. And I know that's really hard for people because they're like, no, we're preparing for attack so that we're not attacked. And then if we are attacked, we'll win. And so it's hard because the universe doesn't work that way. If you prepare for attack, you're inviting attack. And so, and I don't know, it's just so at first I was like, well, okay, well, maybe they're going to redefine the military with this. They could really lift it into like the next age of peace. We don't have to get rid of the military. We don't even have to lay all our weapons down, although we have to stop holding on to them as defenses, and start just really extending more our arms of peace, I think. So then the president released a press statement, which was disappointing. He pretty much right away, he said, oh, it's going to be great. It's really going to add to and the first word he used was our offense. He didn't even say defense first. He said offense. It's going to add to our offense. It's going to add to our defense. And I thought, he's not very good at writing speeches. And he doesn't understand how people evaluate and examine the words that a president chooses to use in his speech. And we all make mistakes. I mean, all the time, I'm like, what did I just say? But I also don't prepare speeches. I just kind of blab because I don't make speeches. But if I did, I would really want to examine and think about what I was saying as well. And so having the first word to describe how excited he is about Space Force as adding to our offense, which suggests attack. Might not be malintended, and but it's very disappointing because our entrance into space and into debuting ourselves into the galaxy is very important, and I just think they kind of have it all wrong. So it's very concerning. Very concerning. So we were speaking on that today. I was just suggesting that, our first ships should be completely peaceful. Some might argue that this International Space Station would check that box, and I think it's given a nice suggestion at an introduction that it's cooperative and it's peaceful. But as far as an actual ship goes, it would need to build from that place, not split from it into a more damaging sphere. And then we could just see. I think that, and they can still offer so much protection. And I think that's what's so important, is to focus on developing and researching and implementing those protections into all that we do. It's much more powerful than weapons are. And it sends all the right messages. And protection is met with protection, which is really cool. Anyways, we have a lot of disagreements about that so far, but that is something we talk about a lot, is space. Anyways, I'm going to get started on tonight's lesson. I don't want to waste too much time. We talk about so much, so I could literally sit here and talk all day, which is would be fine. But okay, so this is chapter 4, which is the illusions of the ego. And I did tell Erin today, I have quite a few voices in my head, and some of them are just so cute. Anyways, there's these ladies, and I don't know where they're from. They might be from somewhere out there, or somewhere in the past, or just maybe who knows, but they're so amazing. And one of them, they have these words, they have a language that sometimes I can figure out what they mean, and some of their words are based off some of ours. So she calls me Sobi-Wan, which I think means like so be one. So we're talking about being one, oneness, one with Christ, one with one another. And also, anyway, so she calls me Sobi-Wan, but she also uses the words Obi-Wan, and it reminds me of Obi-Wan Kenobi, and Gobi-Wan. So she says Obi-Wan, Sobi-Wan, and Gobi-Wan. But I'm Sobi-Wan. And it's so cute. They also say Baba, which I think means sheep or lamb. Geba, Goba, Soba, Babue, which is also me, which I think means fool. And sometimes they say it when they're upset with me. Not really upset, but when they think I'm being stupid or they disagree, they'll call me Babue. But other times they use it very endearingly, like it's not always bad, or they're not always upset. They do use it that sometimes with that, and other times they just call me Babue. So I'm Sobi-Wan or Babue. And they have other words too. Oh, boo-boo. Boo-boo is sometimes it means no or mistake, but other times it means 1-1, 1-1, like 11, which I'm a numerology 11, but I think 1-1 means a lot of things to them. It's interesting they have, it seems like what seems like a very limited vocabulary, but they've crammed so much meaning into all of those things. It can mean all these different things. And so it's very inspiring, and they're so sweet, and I love them so much. But anyway, so I'm still B1. Okay. Oh, heck if you whiz. I guess so. We're gonna read the introduction, and maybe this first section is really long, so I don't want to take too long. So maybe part of the first section. So, illusions of the ego, introduction. The Bible says that you should go with a brother twice as far as he asks. It certainly does not suggest that you set him back on his journey. Devotion to a brother cannot set you back either. It can lead only to mutual progress. The result of genuine devotion is inspiration. A word which is properly understood is the opposite of fatigue. To be fatigued is to be dispirited, but to be inspired is to be in the spirit. To be egocentric is to be dispirited, but to be self-centered in the right sense, that's a capital S, self, is to be inspired or in spirit. The truly inspired are enlightened and cannot abide in darkness. You can speak from the spirit or from the ego, as you choose. If you speak from spirit, you have chosen to be still and know that I am God. These words are inspired because they reflect knowledge. If you speak from the ego, you are disclaiming knowledge instead of affirming it, and thus are dispiriting yourself. Do not embark on useless journeys, because they are indeed in vain. The ego may desire them, but spirit cannot embark on them because it is forever unwilling to depart from its foundation. The journey to the cross should be the last useless journey. Do not dwell upon it, but dismiss it as accomplished. If you can accept it as your own last useless journey, you are also free to join my resurrection. Until you do so, your life is indeed wasted. It merely reenacts the separation, the loss of power, the futile attempts of the ego at reparation, and finally the crucifixion of the body or death. Such repetitions are endless until they are voluntarily given up. The only message of the crucifixion is that you can overcome the cross. Until then, you are free to crucify yourself as often as you choose. This is not the gospel I intended to offer you. We have another journey to undertake, and if you will read these lessons carefully, they will help prepare you to undertake it. So here, Jesus tells us, first of all, I think some people take these things very literally, which of course you can do, and I think has been done. I don't know why you would, because that's pure insanity. Nobody should have to be crucified in the literal sense of the word. And by nobody, I mean not a single soul, not a single human who walks this earth need be crucified. It's just insanity, right? That's already happened, as he says right here. It should be the last useless journey. And do not dwell upon it, but dismiss it as accomplished, right? It's in the past. It's already happened. It never needs to happen again. And that's our last useless journey. So it doesn't mean that, oh, we're on a useless journey right now. So if it's our last useless journey, then it's going to come up and we're going to be crucified. So that's not what that means. That's a very linear way of thinking. And so here in this holy instant, in this one moment that is all time, you can look upon it as accomplished. It's in the past. And we need not take another useless journey, yet emerge into our truth and our reality in this moment. So that useless journey is already behind us, and we find ourselves in what seems to be another one. But we can't. But that journey can fade before our very eyes as we turn to truth and lean into love, and find ourselves on our real journey. And practicing these lessons is already helping us prepare for that journey. So, don't let that freak you out. Just right, he says right here, do not dwell upon it, but dismiss it as accomplished. So, so if we can accept the crucifixion or the journey to the cross, as he says, I apologize, as our own last useless journey, we are free to join in the resurrection, in the rebirth, and in the being raised into heaven to be one with the Father. And so Jesus here is extending that resurrection to each and every single one of us, which is so beautiful. And he says, until you do so, your life is indeed wasted. It merely reenacts the separation, the loss of power, the futile attempts at the ego at reparation, and finally the crucifixion of the body. And here, so he clarifies, or death. And so he's saying, not only is he, if you're looking at it very literally, everything I just said applies, but this reenactment of this separation that we keep doing over and over, through each of those things always ends with death, or as he's calling it, the crucifixion of the body. So once again, it doesn't mean being on the cross. It just means that our body is broken down into a place where we can no longer dwell within it. And so it dies, and we have to move forward. And so we just keep reenacting this because we haven't yet accepted our place in the resurrection, which he's extending to us. So he says such repetitions are endless until they are voluntarily given up. Do not make the pathetic error of clinging to the old rugged cross. Okay, so I skipped that line before. I apologize. The only message of the crucifixion is that you can overcome the cross. Until then, you are free to crucify yourself as often as you choose. This is not the gospel I intended to offer you. We have another journey to undertake, and if you will read these lessons carefully, they will help prepare you to undertake it. So we can choose to stop crucifying ourselves, to stop crucifying one another in whatever form. Stop punishing, stop blaming, shaming, guilting, manipulating, lying, denying. We can just stop all of those things. And as we stop doing them to our brothers and sisters, we stop doing them to ourselves. And it takes practice. Some of them come very easily. Some of us do not try and take other people's lives or severely diminish their lives or take away their freedom to exist in happy, whole, healthy lives. Although we may sometimes lie to one another, manipulate, deny, and so that still must be revisited and brought to correction. But you're doing a really great job as long as you don't stop there, right? So you're like, I'm a good person. I don't do these things. Continually catch yourself. Am I being manipulative? Am I lying? Am I denying? Am I trying to control everything? And I do it. I think we all do. And just keep catching yourself and trying to bring yourself out of it. Don't look upon it and go, okay, well, that's okay. That's the way of the world. It's like, you're right. That is the way of the world. And it's not okay. That's not the world that we want to live in. That's not the world that we deserve. That's not preparing the kingdom. That's not who we are. It's not where we come from. It's not where we're going. It's not why we're here. So it may seem like the way of the world, but it just isn't. So we have to continuously catch ourselves in that and try and bring ourselves further into truth and love and light and joy and peace. And we can help each other do that as well. We don't have to feel guilty or ashamed. It just takes practice. And so that's kind of what I'm trying to do right now. It's very hard in today's environment. I think a lot of us are experiencing isolation and denial. And I of course it's very helpful if we stop doing that to one another and just join and try and lift each other out of whatever one another seems to be struggling with right now. But even if we're being isolated, even if you're being denied, you can work on that. It's going to take longer, and that's okay. It's not your fault. And of course, it's possible to just do it all at once. It just seems to take a lot longer under those types of circumstances. And so the way we can make that happen more quickly for more and more people is to join hands, to stop denying one another and start just really loving and assisting and supporting one another in that decision and in that journey. And really the miracles can start flowing because joining truly is healing. So I think that's a beautiful thing. And I think it's something we should all decide to do. And there it is. So there we have it. Okay. Well, how are we doing on time? 31 minutes. Balboa, she says. I don't know what that one means. Oh. Anyways, they do make a reference to Rocky Balboa sometimes. So I don't know if they've seen that movie before or something. They haven't seen it with me. I mean, unless it was when I was a kid. But they do say Balboa or Bobo. Yeah, Balboa. So that's cute too. Anyways, yeah, we'll just read this first page. So this is called Right Teaching and Right Learning. So a good teacher clarifies his own ideas and strengthens them by teaching them. Teacher and pupil are alike in the learning process. They are in the same order of learning, and unless they share their lessons, conviction will be lacking. A good teacher must believe in the ideas he teaches, but he must meet another condition. He must believe in the students to whom he offers the ideas. Many stand guard over their ideas because they want to protect their thought systems as they are. And learning means change. Change is always fearful to the separated because they cannot conceive of it as a move towards healing the separation. They always perceive it as a move toward further separation. Because the separation was their first experience of change. You believe that if you allow no change to enter into your ego, you will find peace. This profound confusion is possible only if you maintain that the same thought system can stand on two foundations. Nothing can reach spirit from the ego, and nothing can reach ego from the spirit. From spirit. Spirit can neither strengthen the ego nor reduce the conflict within it. The ego is a contradiction. Yourself and God's self are in opposition. They are opposed in source, in direction, and in outcome. They are fundamentally irreconcilable because spirit cannot perceive and the ego cannot know. They are therefore not in communication and can never be in communication. Nevertheless, the ego can learn, even though its maker can be misguided. He cannot, however, make the totally lifeless out of the life given. Spirit need not be taught, but the ego must be. Learning is ultimately perceived as frightening because it leads to the relinquishment, not the destruction, of the ego to the light of spirit. This is the change the ego must fear because it does not share my charity. My lesson was like yours, and because I learned it, I can teach it. I will never attack your ego, but I am trying to teach you how its thought system arose. When I remind you of your true creation, your ego cannot but respond with fear. Teaching and learning are your greatest strengths now because they enable you to change your mind and help others to change theirs. Refusing to change your mind will not prove that the separation has not occurred. The dreamer who doubts the reality of his dream while he is still dreaming is not really healing his split mind. Your dream of a separated ego, you dream of a separated ego and believe in a world that rests upon it. This is very real to you. You cannot undo it by not changing your mind about it. If you are willing to renounce the role of guardian of your thought system and open it to me, I will correct it very gently and lead you back to God. Every good teacher hopes to give his students so much of his own learning that they will one day no longer need him. This is the one true goal of the teacher. It is impossible to convince the ego of this because it goes against all of its own laws. But remember that laws are set up to protect the continuity of the system in which the lawmaker believes. It is natural for the ego to try to protect itself once you have made it. But it is not natural for you to want to obey its laws unless you believe them. The ego cannot make this choice because of the nature of its origin. You can, because of the nature of yours. Whew. So, um, so I think, what really gave me hope here, even though this all gives me so much, but he's right. When I read these teachings, sometimes I'm like, I don't feel threatened. I know that I'm not threatened, but I know there's a part of me, which is my ego. I know it, that feels a little threatened. I know that I'm not. I know who I am. I know I'm a perfect child of God. I know that I'm pure spirit, light, love, and joy. Okay. And there are times when I seem to forget that and I'm doing whatever. I'm, not holding on to that piece. I'm getting upset, whatever that means. And it's that part of me that feels threatened by this. And so I know that I'm not threatened, and I've decided to continue forward in faith, because I know that life is good and the universe is on my side and God will never leave me, and that I really am true love. It's just it can be quite frequently much more than I had realized in trying to do that. That I have to stop and address some fear that's coming up and relinquish it or give it up for healing or let it go or talk myself through it to bring myself back to like, oh, okay, what was I thinking? No worries, we're good, let's keep going. um, so it's hard, it's a process, and I'm so blessed and grateful to be on that journey and to be practicing that, however seemingly slow it may be. um, but what I really liked here is, he says, learning is ultimately perceived as frightening because it leads to the relinquishment, not the destruction, of the ego to the light of spirit. And so I think that some people, as they learn this, they get very scared of. Is everything our ego built or created going to be destroyed? And so does it have to be destroyed because the ego created it? And the answer is no. It's relinquished to the light of spirit. And what spirit does with what our ego built, who knows? Like, mind blown. It could be so amazing. So we don't have to fear destruction. We don't have to look around at everything we've poured so much into, even if it was coming from our ego, into building and think, oh my gosh, all of this has to be destroyed, because it's simply not true. I think it will all be transformed, and we do have to relinquish it to the spirit. We do have to let it go. We can't remain attached to it. We have to be at peace with living without it as we understand it currently. But it doesn't mean it's going to be destroyed. It's going to be relinquished to the spirit and shall be transformed. So I think that's very comforting. It still can be scary as you start to relinquish these things and let them go and remove your attachments to them. You're going to have stuff come up. It's going to be like, but you can remember that truth and go, okay, it's going to be okay. It's going to be okay. This is really scary, but I know it's the right thing to do. And so I'm comforted by that. So yeah, blah blah blah, yada yada. I'm gonna stop right there. Tomorrow we'll pick up on the other half. Thank you. I love you. You're amazing. Whoever you are, my one fan. Thank you. Have a great night.